Welcome. I'm excited to dive in here. Today we're talking about macros 101. I'm going to simplify as much as possible. Actually, let's call it simplifying macros. Simplifying macros 101. Regardless, I'm going to break this down in a very simple manner to give you a better idea of what it's like to understand basically what I would call the 4 food groups. Okay? Now, we're going to dive in. However, I'd like to mention, if you're not sure who I am, my name is Drew Tadia, founder and CEO of True Form Life. For the past 20 years, we've been helping women 40 plus increase energy, burn body fat, and balance hormones. So you came to the right place. I'm gonna dive in here. I want to be as efficient as possible. So I feel like in general, we as a society are pretty good at complicating things. And I feel like I'm pretty good at explaining things because I understand things very simply. I have a simple brain. And I feel like a lot of other people do as well, which makes it easier for them to understand me. It's our other part of our brain that feels the need to complicate everything. So when it comes to macros in particular, it's just a fancy word like macronutrients. It's a long word that sounds a bit scientific. All it means is 4 food groups. So very simple. These are proteins, fats, carbs, and what we often refer to as the forgotten about macronutrient is antioxidants or fiber, which is your veggies. Okay. It does get technical or maybe more scientific because if you take like protein, for example, you can combine like beans and rice, a complete protein. Like you can combine foods that aren't a meat to get a protein, but you don't need to worry about that for the most part. If you're newer, or if you're a beginner, or if you're just getting into whether that's balancing macros or learning about nutrition or meal planning, you don't really need to know all that. All you need to do is push all that noise aside, and it's as simple as possible. 4 food groups. And you know what, to be honest with you, most experts wouldn't even consider veggies a macro because when they count macros or count calories, veggies are nothing. Like you could have a huge bowl of broccoli and it's 10 calories. So often it's not even added or used. So you could consider simplifying even more and looking at 3 macros. You could have your protein, carbs, and fats. All right. I would suggest adding veggies. And it's important for a number of different reasons, but I'm going to explain it to you right now. But for your brain to not overthink macros, food groups. And there's only 3 or 4 of them. Done. That's it. So I feel like it's important to know that within those macros, there's different types of, nutrients that I would suggest. So protein is the easiest one or maybe the biggest one because most women over 40 aren't getting enough protein, not by a long shot. Most women are getting about 25 grams of protein. I would say on average by my count, when women come to me, they have maybe 1 egg in the morning, a salad with nothing, greens, so 1 macro, and then they have a big supper with maybe a chicken breast, so 20 grams. So maybe 26 grams of protein in an entire day, which is crazy to me, but very normal the way we live right now. That's one of the first things that we change when we start working with women inside of our metabolism accelerator program. We look at breakfast because we need to increase our metabolism, which is what we do. Let me see. Hopefully that's giving you guys a good baseline. All right. Now, if we were to dive into each macro now, I've done full trainings on each macro. I could sit here for an hour at least and talk about every single one of them. I'm going to give you the simplest overview for you to understand so you don't have to think too much into it. Okay. So if we're looking at protein, we have a number of different suggestions or ideas that I would suggest that you implement in protein. So for example, you have eggs, great source of protein. Greek yogurt, you have cottage cheese, and then you have more meats, like you have your fish, chicken, turkey, beef. So that is 1 macro. So if I were to design a meal plan for you, I would grab from a list that we have, I grab 1 macro and I put it in there, whether that's breakfast, lunch, supper, etc. Okay. So maybe you have eggs for breakfast. Okay. Now we're looking at another macro. So fats and carbs are very similar with the fear because of the different phases that we go through. We go through different phases of no fats or butter or margarine, over those, or you have your oils. Right now, I feel like we're more in the oils. Like, hopefully we understand that vegetable seed oils are rancid. We need to stay away from them. So fats can get a little bit more complicated, but the very basics is that you need to have fats in your diet as a macro. So a fat, like a really nice natural fat, is like an avocado, a real avocado. It's so funny because people don't want avocados. They're too expensive. I don't know which ones to pick. I've heard all the reasons why not. But avocado is a really nice, natural, healthy source. And I say natural because otherwise, in many cases, besides like nuts and seeds, you're going to the grocery store to buy something. And a lot of times people will buy vegetable oil, which is rancid. It causes inflammation in your body, ruins your gut microbiome, etc. So if you buy an avocado and get used to eating it, as your taste buds change, you don't have to worry about which oil to choose. So that's fats in particular. And the good fats eat the bad fats. Like, you need fats for fuel that will energize your body. You need fats to increase your metabolism. There's many benefits to having fats in your life. You could look at the top of my list, I would have a high quality MCT oil, like a caprylic acid, C8, pure, organic. That's what we have. That's one of our products. If you're looking at olive oil, that one's a little bit more difficult because the industry is really shady. It's one of the oldest traded commodities. They slice it and dice it like a sugar. They put a lot of junk in there. And I think actually we had this lady come in one of these health food presentations, and she had some type of, use my language or link. She had some type of orchard, or she had a place in Italy or Greece, and she cold pressed. She had a really high quality oil, and she was telling us about the industry. And I think it was a really low, maybe 5% of your oil, your olive oil, needed to be coming from olive oil, and the rest was cheap or rancid, like grapeseed oils, etc. So that's why I would suggest, if you're going the olive oil route, it needs to be a high quality and not the cheapest one on the rack. For fats, we have to stay away from clear plastic bottles, like the plastic leeches. I don't think we should be using plastic in or as little as possible, certainly for your oils. So the plastic leaches into the oil, and also because it's clear, the sun damages it and causes it to be rancid before it hits your body. And once it hits your body, and then of course we cook with it on high temperatures, and we destroy the beneficial properties, and then we put it in our body, and then we have all this inflammation. We can't figure out why. In large part because of that oil. And then you have to look at processed food, right? Processed food, chips, crackers, they all have the cheap, rancid oils that cause more damage on our body. Okay, that was a little bit more deep than I wanted to go with the fats. But with the fats in particular, if it's a liquid, you usually want a dark bottle, probably glass in my opinion. Doesn't always have to be stored in the fridge. But we need to start adding more fats to our diet to round our macronutrients, to get yourself a full list, a full array. And each one of them have different benefits. So if you're missing one of them, that's when our body lacks. So I had this lady, she came to us. She actually wasn't one of our paying customers. She joined one of our challenges. I talked about macros. She started to add fats into her diet, and her metabolism and energy went through the roof. And she lost 10 pounds in a very short amount of time, in 20 days or something like that. She had more to lose, and she was probably being more active and doing other things. I'm not saying you just add some fats and you're going to melt weight off. I'm just using that as an acute example that was very clear to me. She was like, I can't believe this. I haven't had fats in my diet for years because I thought it was going to make me fat. It doesn't work like that. We need to have fats in our diet. So if we're looking at breakfast, for example, you could have eggs, you could have avocado, you could cook in a nice grass-fed butter. I'm getting more into ghee at the moment. I'm experimenting, trying with that. Coconut oil is really nice. It has a high smoke point, so you can cook with it on high temperatures without it going rancid. If you're having a salad, for example, You have your protein, let's say sliced chicken breast, and then you could put MCT oil over top, 2 of your macros. Then you have your veggies, and then you throw in there, you could throw in some quinoa, you can throw in some sweet potato, which I'm going to talk about next. That is a full salad. When most women say, oh, I'm having salad for lunch, it's like maybe a chicken breast and some greens. Very minimal. It's certainly not all the calories and the nutrients that you need to have your body fueled optimally. Okay, let's move on to carbohydrate. I know this is a lot. I'm going over it quickly. I'm sure I could find we have our YouTube channel. We have other areas where we have full trainings on each one of these, which I can share with you. Feel free to comment below if you want more details of these in particular, but also consider trying to not overthink this. You don't have to know this much about it. All you really need to know is the basics and how to piece together your meal plans for you. If you have someone doing that for you, then you can remove all of the overthinking. If someone's creating meal plans for you and here's a meal plan, just follow this, that's probably the easiest route instead of trying to figure out all this on your own. I digress. Moving on to carbohydrates. You have your different list of carbohydrates. So we have our simple carbs and we have our complex carbs. So only 2 categories. Again, try not to overcomplicate this. 2 simple categories. Usually the darker carbs are the carbs you want to consume. Those, in my brain, I see like fiber makes them darker. No idea if that's true or not. But the white ones, the lighter ones, don't have fiber. They process very quickly. So simple sugars, simple carbs, simple sugars. They process very quickly in the body. They turn into sugar almost instantly. It's very similar to eating a candy. You get the blood sugar spike. It's hard to see in adults, but if you have any kids in your family, kids, grandkids, and they have sugar and they don't have it all the time, that's the caveat. They don't have it all the time. I feel like there's some real issues around sugar, ADHD, that I probably won't get into right now, but if kids are always on sugar and they're always heightened, they can never focus. Dorothy used to be a teacher for years, and she would tell me the kids would come with whole lunch boxes full of sugar. And then of course the kids can't pay attention. They're bouncing around all over the place. And then they get labeled something because they have too much sugar in their diet. You should remove the sugar. Their focus changes, their energy changes. They can actually learn something for a few minutes, right? It's important to understand that it's the same thing for if you're on a high sugar diet, you probably have less focus. You have less ability to regulate your body temperature. So your body, think about, it's not homeostasis. It's like your body's always fluctuating of sugar spike and then a low, sugar spike and a low. And that's often why we have sugar crashes, or it's very similar to caffeine. Like you have caffeine spike. It's like the world we live in is, instead of built around being in a relaxed state of being, it's always heightened and dropped and heightened and dropped. When it comes to carbohydrates in particular, staying away from the white. So you could look at white bread, for example, not a great one. White potatoes, probably not even though I know it's difficult because at least where we grew up, a lot of people grow white potatoes in the garden and they harvest them. And then those garden potatoes taste much better than store-bought potatoes. I would consider you can still have those potatoes, just more sparingly. So those lighter colored carbohydrates are simple carbohydrates. If you look at more complex carbohydrates, these are slower digesting. And you have your quinoa, you have your sweet potatoes, maybe a whole grain rice. These are better options. They have fiber, they have slower digestion, which means it's a slower release, and you'll have more energy. You'll also have better bowel movements, better digestion. There's so many more benefits to having the carbohydrates, which offer more of a sustainable amount of energy. So a lot of women come to us in particular, and they say, I don't have any energy. And then we'll look at, what's interesting is, so they'll say, I don't have any energy. And I'll say, okay, what's going on? Are you doing any activity, working out, moving and grooving? And usually it's no. Usually it's either walking or no exercise at all. And I wouldn't consider walking and exercise in the resistance training world of what the benefits of resistance training have over walking or over cardio. So if you look at how to increase your energy, the number one way to increase your energy is to move your body and exercise. And 99% of people that come to me and say I don't have any energy aren't exercising, which actually gives them energy. Crazy thought, right? But then you look at carbohydrates in particular, and because of the lack of nutrients in our diets as a whole, including carbohydrates, because of that fear of carbohydrates, if I eat too many carbs, I don't know which carbs to have, I don't know how much, etc. That is causing the lack of complex carbohydrates, is creating lack of energy in your life. So all you need to do is understand which that you need carbohydrates, A, and then which ones that you should be consuming is B. Okay. The last one I'm going to mention here is the forgotten about macronutrient, the fiber, the antioxidants. So if you look at veggies in particular, we need to have veggies for, okay, I already mentioned fiber, but this is very specific to more fibrous types of nutrients going into your body. It's really good for digestion. It helps your digestion churn and balance, and it helps your gut microbiome balance, and it helps to separate the other macros that's going into your body. So you'll have someone that will have a steak, like a big old steak and a pile of potatoes and maybe a piece of bread with butter on it, right? Very little to no veggies, which causes that meal to cause digestion issues. So you have the gas, bloating. We see those more prominent, not just minnow belly for women, but also those big pot bellies for men. It's usually digestion issues, lifestyle in general, but we need to have the veggies in particular to help break down other nutrients. That's number one. The fiber will help slow digestion. So if you're having a white potato and white bread, that's going to be very quick digesting, and that's not particularly what we want. Not in this regard. I say not in this regard because if you're looking at workouts or protein or a deeper level, then we look at different types of nutrients at different times, which is certainly not simplifying. When it comes to your supper, for example, that supper in particular, supper or dinner, depending on where you are, I would consider the 4 macronutrients to balance your meals out. So you might have a piece of fish or a piece of steak. That's fine. 4 to 6 ounces, depending on what else you're having throughout the day. And then you have your sweet potato. And then you could, on that sweet potato, you could drizzle on some MCT oil. You could put some grass-fed butter or ghee on there with salt and pepper, however you want to season that sweet potato. I really like, one of my favorite ways to create sweet potatoes, I can do for you. Chop them up in squares and put them on the barbecue, and you can put some dill on there and then salt and pepper. And then once those are done, you put them in a bowl, and you can put ghee in there, or you can put coconut oil or butter and mix it all together. And then you place it on the table for people to enjoy it. And then that will give you your healthy fat. Okay, so you have your sweet potato with your healthy fat. You have your meat, whatever that may be. And then you have your side of veggies. That could be steamed broccoli. There's dozens of different veggies that might be that you might like to enjoy. Veggies are an easy one. There's so many that you can have. There's very few that I'd suggest staying away from. Okay, did I cover that? So for veggies in particular, one of the main benefits that I envision is the ability to fight free radicals. So free radicals are damaging at a cellular level, and some we can control and some we aren't able to control. So for example, the pollution outside, pretty difficult to control. You can control that more inside. We have a really nice HEPA air filter that can control our air quality inside. When you're outside, pollution, etc., it's pretty difficult. You have your stress levels, which is damaging much more than we know to our overall body, but at a cellular level. You could look at fumes of people, like people using laundry detergent, perfumes. Those are endocrine disruptors. Those are very damaging on different levels. So those are different types of free radicals that harm us in many different ways. And there's lots of those. You can look at the chemicals, the soaps that you're using, the chemicals you're putting in your body. Those are damaging to our body. So something that could help like naturally is those are free radicals. And then we use antioxidants to fight that challenge. Living in this world, there's so many toxins. So usually the brighter, lighter types of veggies, like bell peppers always come to my mind, like red bell peppers, orange bell peppers. Those ones tend to have more antioxidants. And then you have the dark leafy greens, those ones that tend to have more fiber. So that's why it's a good idea to have a nice variety of different veggies that you're having on a regular basis. So I think it's as simple as it can get. If I were to recap here, you're looking at, so your four macros are 4 food groups. You have your protein, you have your fats, you have your carbs, and you have your veggies. Okay, 4 simple food groups. And you want some type of combination on your plate at every meal. It might be more challenging early on. Like if you're going to a breakfast, for example, at a hotel, it's difficult. Rarely do they have some veggies for you to enjoy. It's usually mostly carbs, right? And maybe a couple boiled eggs or some scrambled eggs from a box. That one's certainly more challenging for you to consume or find, but you can go and do other things to make that happen. Regardless, it should be much more easier to get all your macros in at a lunch, at a supper. So if you look at, instead of looking at the acute or maybe like just one meal, how am I going to make this one meal perfect? Do the best you can on this meal and then improve your lunch and then get better at suppers. And then we're talking about this particularly with our MET members is with these adjustments, it's not one side or the other side. It's not A or B. I'm either doing it or I'm not. These are linear, they're deeper. So you can consider how many calories you're having in a day. You can consider how much protein you're having in a day. These are all things that you could track that yourself, if you like, if you're not seeing the results you're hoping for. You can decide how much space in between each meal you're having, depending on your digestion, depending on what time you're waking up and going to sleep. You could consider a snack in the evening before bed to help fight cravings. So I know that particularly is not simplifying your life, but I'm just saying that these are just the very basics. So if you're starting out and you're not having breakfast, then just start out and having breakfast. If you're not having any breakfast at all, have a cup of yogurt or a cup of cottage cheese or a banana and a peanut butter, or just banana. Like, we need to start somewhere and then slowly improve. And I would suggest getting better at one first. Get better at breakfast, make that a habit. Wait till you're having it every morning. Your metabolism is going to start to speed up. You're going to have more energy. So once you have that breakfast solidified, then work on one other meal. Work on your lunch. And then make sure the lunch is consistent. Make sure it has all the macros. And then that's time to move on to supper. Are you eating supper out 3 times a week? I'd imagine most people are. So let's say we only eat out 2 times a week for the next 3 weeks or for the next month. And we're going to focus on our supper meal to improve that in particular before we take the next step. And that could be adding an evening snack, or that could be adding a midday snack because you feel like you're going through a little energy crash. Okay, that's just the basics of nutrition in particular, right? Then you could look at supplementation. And of course, you could look at your activity level, because if you have a higher activity level, you might need more nutrients going into your body. In fact, that's a really hard concept for a lot of women to wrap their head around, because our women in particular, like once they start to feel better, they're walking more. Some of them are hiking. One of our ladies today just talked about how she just felt more energy. She hasn't run in years, but she wanted to start running. So she's starting to feel better, more confidence, clothes are fitting better. That's overall transformations where I'm so grateful we get to work with women to make that happen. So now that she's like this particular member, she's running more often, she actually needs more fuel. So she needs more food. So, but that's a hard concept, because we as a society, women in particular, are like, okay, if I eat more food, I'm going to gain more weight. It doesn't work like that. If we have better quality foods, if we pay attention to portion sizes and balanced macros, though that food gets burned off as energy, increases our metabolism, and our body functions at a higher rate. Overall, our digestion, energy, brain fog, it's all beneficial. It's the not eating slows metabolism, alcohol slows metabolism, damages internally. You also have the deep fried, the rancid oils. Those are the things you need to stay away from. Those are the things that are going to cause more issues in your life, including weight gain, starting with slowing your metabolism. So I'm going to jump off here, but hopefully that gives you some very basics of what's happening. So 4 macros. Try to have each one in at least 2, 3, and maybe 4 if you're more advanced. But we can certainly help you, walk you through that if you need some help. Yes, I'll leave you with that. We do have a digestion challenge coming up next week. So it's called Menno Belly, Beat the Bloat. So it's a master class, going to be at 7 p.m. on Tuesday. If you want to sign up, it's a free class. If you want to sign up, comment below. We'll drop the link for you. But it's going to be fantastic. I'm going to talk about how you guys can get rid of that. It's seeming like a natural menno bloat that women go through, menopausal type of stage in their life. But I don't think it has to be normal. We've seen countless women get rid of that menno belly. Doesn't matter their age or what they're going through. And I'm going to tell you a clear step-by-step process of exactly how to do that. And that's going to give you more energy. It's going to get rid of that gas, indigestion, certainly the bloating. And it's going to be fantastic. So if you want to join us, we'll send the link. And if you're not able to make it at that time, you should still sign up because we'll email out the replay after. Sound good? Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching the replay. I'm not able to see questions. So if you're in here live and you were commenting or asking questions, I'll answer your questions after. Always appreciate your comments and likes and appreciate your support across the board. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy your weekend. Take care, everyone.